Welcome to Anywhere Art. Today I'm going to talk about how to choose your art supplies if you're a beginner. There are so many art supplies on the market now that you can go crazy in an art supply store and your hair can stand up because there's just too many to choose from. So I thought I'd try to simplify it. Let's start out with paint. If you are just starting out, I recommend buying paint either in a small plastic student palette like this. This one's made by Winsor Newton. It's their Cotman sketching box. And it has all the paints that I think in a nice array of colors. Teeny tiny brush, which isn't really so good, but it's a nice set that you can buy. It's a little bit, I think it may be under $20, and it'll grow with you as you continue to paint. Or you can gift it to somebody if you decide watercolor is not for you. You can replace the paints in the that come in the little half pans, if you like, with more expensive paints as you continue to paint. And so even if you upgrade your paints to a different box, you can still continue to use this little box for going out and painting. It's called a pocket box because it's small enough to fit in your pocket. So I recommend that. That's done. You only have to buy that. Or you could also go another route. You could go onto the internet and you can buy a metal box that holds, I believe this one is called the 12-pan box. And there's lots of manufacturers that sell them on Amazon. And what you do is you buy these little, in addition to buying the little box, which is not very expensive, I believe it's under $10, you buy these little half pans. This is a half pen, and you buy them empty. Then you go ahead, and what you do is you buy tube paint, which you squeeze into the half pan. You can also buy, this is called a whole pan if you want more, or you're going to use a bigger brush. But I recommend half pans if you're just starting out. So you could start with this little box. It'll last you forever. You'll hand it down to your grandchildren. That's another way to start. You could also DIY. This is an old pencil tin that I DIY'd and put half pans in and squeeze the tubes into the paint. You can also go with the student brand. I think this is one of the most reliable student brands. It does okay. It does pretty well. I was a little, it's praying. Remember, you probably used it as a kid if you're my age. Anyways, it's not a bad student brand, but I recommend starting out with Cotman instead of that. But if you happen to have one of these around, it'll work pretty well. Then you could also, if you discover that you love watercolor, it's not much more expensive to upgrade. So I believe this is called a 24-pan box. And I have a combination of whole and half pans in it. You could just fill it all with half pans if you like. And you can just fill it with your beginning colors and then continue to use it as you acquire more colors as you get further along. Another DIY paint box is to use an Altoids tin or a candy tin. And you can put the half pans in there. Keep a little sponge in there, and you can also spray this with white paint so that it gives you a surface to mix on. If you need more mixing room, you can always use a white china plate, or you can buy a small palette at the art supply store. So that takes care of palettes starting out. It's over here. Then let's talk about paint, because paint is very confusing too. There's so many manufacturers, there's so many colors. I recommend not buying a big box set of colors from one of the big box stores. Those generally don't work out. I like the manufacturers Da Vinci. I like Daniel Smith, very reliable watercolors. Winsor Newton makes very good watercolors. Also, Holbein makes wonderful watercolors. Are a bit more expensive. They're artist quality. And also Schminke, which is a much more expensive artist quality. So if you're starting out, start with Da Vinci or start with Winsor Newton. Winsor Newton Cotman is the student grade paint and it's cheaper. It's the cheapest. And start with a little tube. if you can, if your budget permits, start with the artist quality paints. Winsor Newton, Artist Quality, Da Vinci, or Daniel Smith, because they have less filler, they have brighter colors, and you can use them for a long time. But if you have to start with student brand, that's great. Everybody does. Start with the cotton, and they're good. So that said, the colors. You could start painting with just 3 colors. You could invest in a lemon yellow, a phthalo blue, and a permanent rose. And you could mix a wide variety of colors. You'd be pretty happy with that. You can buy them in smaller tubes too, so they might be cheaper. Then if you want to add to that, you could then buy colors that I find are necessary, earth colors, but a little bit more challenging to mix. So that would be, I'd add yellow ochre and burnt sienna. Then, if you want to spend some more money, you could add a warm and cool of your primaries. So you could add a fire engine red. You already have a permanent rose, which is a blue red. You could add a bright mustard yellow to your cool lemon yellow, and you could probably add phthalo blue to ultramarine blue, or ultramarine blue to the phthalo blue. Also, you could add, if you wanted to, well, okay, this one I would go next. I'd go with a sap green. That's a wonderful color to have. You could mix it from your 3 original colors using blue and yellow, but sap green is nice to have already mixed, saves time. You could also add a violet, but you could mix that from your 3 primary colors. And I think that's it. So you could start with 3, you could buy as many as 8 or 9, but that's all you really need. Then let's talk about brushes, because brushes are fairly important. So you could buy the American Journey brand from Cheap Joe's. It's a good quality brush, and it's not too expensive. Last time I checked, it was around $7 to $10 for the different ones. And I would start with a round watercolor brush, number 6, size 6, or 5 if you can't find a 6. That's all you need really to paint for a while, happily. Then you could also, I'd recommend getting a slightly bigger brush if you want to invest. This is a size 12, so you can do bigger areas with this brush. You can get synthetic or synthetic mixed with sable brushes. Then I'd recommend a rigger brush or a liner brush, because it's excellent to have one of these in a size 2 or 3 for making tree limbs and lines and animal hair, all kinds of things. And I also like to have a little squared off brush like this, a flat brush I think it's called. These are excellent because they can make lines this way, you can draw with them on the corner, and you can make big marks this way. So you really don't need too many brushes to start out. Like I said, you could just start out with the round and then invest as you find that you really like watercolor and want to delve further into it. As far as, you could get a water brush. Not crazy about a water brush, but if you're in situations where you don't have water handy, a water brush is nice because the water's in the belly and you just squeeze it and it comes out, and you can paint with that. They're okay, especially if you could learn to control the watercolor. The other thing you could invest in, and I've seen online, is you can buy a set, like for under $16 to $19, a set of these travel brushes, which are synthetic mixed with some sable, and they're really good quality for the price, and you could use these both as a bigger brush and then as a travel brush, so those are kind of a nice investment if you're starting out. Let's talk about pencils. All you need to start out is a number 2 HB pencil. You might want a pencil sharpener too, just the old school kind of little handheld pencil scrape sharpener. And you probably want, for erasers, you want a white eraser, or you could use a bigger one, or you could use a kneaded eraser. This is called a kneaded eraser, and it's very good because it can get into little places for you to erase like this, and you can also clean it like this, and it doesn't ruin your watercolor paper, so it's very soft. Then let's talk about paper. That's probably the biggest thing that is confusing. So actually the best thing to do is start out with the best quality paper you can afford, but certainly if you're on a budget, there are some good budget papers out there you can buy. Canson, C-A-N-S-O-N is a good one. Strathmore has some good watercolor, student brand watercolor. I like this one. Someone gave me a teeny tiny pad of it. It's a Stonehenge Legion watercolor paper. It's a cold press. Cold press means it's got some bumps in it, a little bit of texture, not too much. I like that. You can also buy, these are little pieces of Arches watercolor paper. Arches is the gold standard. It's the best paper I think there is. Arches 140-pound cold press. And you can buy big sheets, or you can buy it in pads. You can if you buy the big sheets, you can rip it up into little sizes. Or you can invest, especially if you're just trying watercolor, you can invest in a little pocket size pad. This is a Stillman and Byrne. I like this size so much because everything looks cuter, smaller, and it doesn't take you too long, and it's not so precious because it's tiny. So, and they fit in your pocket, so you can throw them in your purse or your pocket and go out and paint anywhere you want. Then you could also invest something like this. This is a multimedia pad. It's not too expensive. I think I bought it at Walmart. And you can paint right in it with watercolor, or you can try other things as well. Let's see if I have some watercolor. Yeah, I was practicing. I was actually practicing during the pandemic with cheap watercolors for kids. And the results are pretty good for this paper. So you could invest in something like this. So that would be it for paper. The other thing I would suggest, though, that I see in my classes all the time is have a board to support your paper while you're working on it. And you can just clip it on, you could tape it on, and then it's so much better because you can move around your board as you paint on your paper. You can also, gravity is really important with watercolor, so you could also tilt it on something so that the paint rolls down as you paint. So I recommend having a board, and it can be as simple, it doesn't have to even be a clipboard. It could be as simple as just the back cardboard from a sketchbook or from something else you have around your house. So that would be the paper. You're almost there. The only other things, some incidentals might be, you could have just a cup that you find around to keep your water in. 2 cups are better. You can have one for clean and one for dirty. Or you could invest, you can buy these on the internet. These are cute, made by Faber-Castell, and you just push them down and they take up less room in your watercolor bag, and then you pop them up and fill them with water when you're ready to go. Also, this is cool, your brush fits right on it. So you could get one of those. I always also like to have some artist tissue, and I like to have some kind of a rag because it's all about controlling the amount of water and the paint together. So a lot of times I have to dab. I have a dropper, just any old kind of dropper you might find in your medicine cabinet, or you could buy one, because sometimes you want to have the exact amount, or you just want to add water in small places. You also want to have some kind of a little sprayer. It doesn't have to be this little, but when you start out painting with your watercolor box, generally it's dried out from the last time. So if you spray it with a little paint, just spray it, it makes the waters easier to manipulate and lift off, and you get brighter colors. So I kind of think that's about it. I think if you just bought what you can afford and what you need, and if you want to make some of it, you could be very happily painting and not confused. So if you like this video, click like, and I'll look forward to seeing you in the next video.